14 years ago, I weighed a quarter of a ton. I was 505 pounds. My mother wrote me a letter. And in that letter it said, Tyler, parents aren't supposed to bury their children. And that pissed me off. Not in the way that you would think. Like, it didn't make me go, oh my gosh, now I gotta go lose weight and I gotta do all this crazy stuff. I was mad. Like, I wanted to cut her out of my life. Like, send a horse's head to let her wake up in the bed, Godfather style. I was mad. So I was ready to cut her out of my life. And so for 2 weeks, I ate like an idiot. Not that I wasn't already, but I ate more like an idiot. And I recollect this day. It was almost 14 years ago to the day. It's a few weeks off. I was driving down the road, and I had to go pick up a seatbelt extender from the dealership. And I don't know if women's clothing comes in negative sizes, but the 17-year-old working the parts counter at the Ford dealership in Murfreesboro, Tennessee was a negative clothing size. And she looked at me, and she said, what is it that you need again? I said, it's a seatbelt extender. You know, like fat people on an airplane when they, and I was like, no, you've never ridden on an airplane, don't lie. So I had this moment, I was like, okay, got it. It's part number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She said, okay, I don't think we have that. I'm like, I ordered it, I have the email, it's here, go find it. And so I stepped back out of the way, and I'm standing maybe 15 feet from the counter where she was. And she shows up, and she comes to the microphone PA, and she says, will the person who needed the seatbelt extender please come to the parts counter right now? I have your order ready. As if there was anybody else in the parts room that weighed 500 pounds at the time. And so I snatched up my seatbelt extenders, and I went to my truck. And I'd gotten in the truck, and I decided to go to my favorite, vaguely racistly named Mexican restaurant on the planet, the Lazy Donkey. And, you can always judge like the quality of a Mexican restaurant by how many different menu items they forgot to translate from Spanish into English on the menu. It's like a rule somewhere. It's on the internet. It's got to be true. And you eat at a restaurant too often when you have a table. But the reason that I had a table is it was the only table that I actually fit in. I didn't fit in any of the booths. It was the only table that didn't have a table behind it. And I was practically sitting in their kitchen. So when I showed up, this wonderful lady in her floral dress literally moved a family off of my table and put them in another table. And so I sat down in my chair, again, the only chair at my only table that I could sit in. And I sat there. She didn't take my order because she didn't need to. 2 chimichangas, extra rice, giant bowl of cheese dip, double chips, bring me 2 Cokes because you won't be able to keep up with me. And I sat there waiting for my food. They brought the food, and they came and celebrated me with the International Mexican Food greeting of hot plate, hot plate. And they put the hot plate down, and as I leaned back, all I remember is hearing the chair snap underneath me and going backwards. And on top of me fell rice and the biggest bowl of cheese dip I have ever experienced, all about the gentleman region. I don't know if you've ever poured an entire pot of scalding coffee on your crotch, but cheese dip sort of lingers like the napalm of coffee. It burned with a fire and vengeance. And so I remember reaching into my wallet and pulling out a $20 bill and throwing it down and barging out of the place covered in cheese dip and rice. And I got into my truck, and I mentioned, I actually asked them to mention that I like to fish because I grew up around water. And so there's kind of this thing where the Bible says like a dog returns to its own vomit. And that's a really bad analogy, but I go where I'm comfortable, and I'm comfortable around water. And so I go, there's this little spillway dam that's not very far from my house. And so I stop there and I just crack my window because the air conditioning couldn't keep up with the size of me. And I unbuckled my seatbelt, extended seatbelt. And I started watching this family playing across the pond. Well, it's sort of a river. There's a really shallow spot where it's a little eddy and the current isn't strong, so the children actually get to show up there and play. And I started crying. Like, I was just mad because I wasn't any good to anybody. I literally could not stay awake more than 2 hours. The doctor just informed me that my latest blood work, my A1C, was over 13. For those of you that want to do the backwards math, that's about an average 680 glucose. We were actually talking about this yesterday. When the dam breaks big for those of us that can get that large. And I was watching this family and these little kids playing. And I just started crying. I was failing as a father, I was failing as a husband, I was failing as a son, I was failing as an employee, I was failing as a human. At the time I was actually the pastor of a small church and I was failing those. Who am I to talk about self-control and restraint and all the power that is inherent in the faith practices of those of us who ascribe to that belief while weighing 500 pounds? Getting 4 dozen donuts for the church so that I could eat 2 dozen before I got to church. Yeah, exactly. And so I was in pieces. And then I had this realization as the family sort of noticed that there was a person staring at their children, that if the police showed up, they were going to find a man whose pants were unbuttoned because they didn't fit anymore, and because my crotch was burned with scalding hot queso fresco. And they were going to find the window down with white cheese stain all over my pants. And there was no way I was not going to federal prison for something, because they would have found some trumped up charge. They wouldn't even needed to plant drugs. They'd just been like, look at you, you're guilty, you're going to jail. So the next week was opening day of deer season, the other reason that I mentioned that I hunt as well. And so I go to the farm. We've actually got about 200 acres in Kentucky, and we've got a cabin there. And I woke up, and my dad and I usually, because beds are always short on opening weekend, and so I wake up. My dad shared in the king-size bed that's there, and I woke up and my dad wasn't in the bed. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got up and I walked around the corner and I looked, and my dad is sitting slumped over in a chair. And I thought to myself, oh Jesus, my dad's dead. I said, Dad. He doesn't respond. I said, Dad. I'm trying not to wake everybody else up, because everybody says they're going hunting, but the reality is they just want to get away from their wives for a while. I didn't say that out loud, I don't think. Maybe I did, and it may be on record, but oh well. And he finally turns and he looks at me and he is crying. I once buried a treble hook in my father's back when I was 7 years old. And the doctors in here are going to cringe, because he handed me the keys and told me to start the engine and drive to the marina. And I drove there, and he said, hey, do you guys sell kerosene? And they said, yeah, sure. He said, get some kerosene and give me a box knife. And I watched my father soak a box knife in kerosene and cut a treble hook out of his back, and he did not utter a word or a sound and did not cry. And my father was in tears. He said, Tyler, do you know that when you go to sleep at night, you don't breathe for 90 seconds? He said, I could not sleep because every time I heard you breathe, that pissed me off in a different way. And I'm a big nerd, and my brother had started playing with this low carb thing. And I wanted to prove to him that it was stupid and futile, and if he'd just eat less and move more, that the world would be a happy place, and that His problem was he sat at a desk all day. And then I realized that I was the stupid one because, I was wrong. There was nothing inherently unhealthy about eating this way. And so I'm standing up here at about 215 pounds. Got down to 205 for a day, starved myself, I looked diseased, and I decided that I needed to actually gain some weight. That's a new one. And it's been absolutely crazy. So I just want to leave you guys with this. Your power to come back from wherever you are is directly proportional to the work and the effort that you're going to put into it. But don't put your efforts and your work and your energy into things that are not going to yield fruit. If nothing else, just let me stand as a bit of a testimony to say, look, there is no too far. If you're still breathing, if you still give a damn, there is no too far. Just change. We'll say, well, that's easy for you to say. Just change. Yeah, change necessitates change. Just change. Do something different. See if that works. Eat something different. See if that works. And try something different and see if that works.